Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's Professor Nicolaides once again, and welcome to my little talk today, which is going to be on the definition of corporate social responsibility and why it's an important aspect to consider. If we look at the concepts of corporate social responsibility and business ethics, they have very distinct identities. But we find that very often these terms are used interchangeably. And so the term business ethics is intended as a combination of two very familiar words, business and ethics, but there are unfortunately businesses that are not ethical in their CSR initiatives. So when we have genuine CSR, corporate social responsibility, this implies that businesses fully embrace environmental and societal challenges. The notion of corporate social responsibility is not a new thing, but it is progressively becoming a very decisive part of business practices across the globe. We can go back to 1776 when Adam Smith, in his An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, stated that the free market didn't continuously perform flawlessly, and he counseled that the marketplace participants must act honestly and rightly towards one another if the ideals of the free market are to be attained at all. And there have been numerous proponents and definitions of CSR from round about the 1960s, which have all ultimately led to the fine-tuned contemporary definitions. Nonetheless, there are authors like Van Marwijk who state that the many and varied definitions of corporate social responsibility are usually biased towards specific interests. And this, of course, hinders the development and the universal implementations of the concept. Only a few are touched on here to demonstrate the evolutionary process involved. The definitions today are multidisciplinary, and the consequences of an assortment of themes, including inter alia business ethics, corporate governance, social responsibility, sustainable development, and the famous triple bottom line, and the most important aspects would be corporate philanthropy and corporate citizenship. If we go back to 1960, the Iron Law of Responsibility maintained that the social responsibility of businessmen in the United States needed to be proportionate to their social influence. There was a belief that businessmen ought to manage their enterprises in a capitalistic economy system that satisfies the expectations of the community in general. By the 1970s, it was generally accepted that a socially responsible business was one in which managerial staff balanced an array of interests. Not only profit was pursued, but indeed also to a limited extent, the interests of all the employees, the suppliers, the dealers, the local communities. And so social programs were utilized to enhance profits. And business also had economic, legal, ethical, and optional expectations of society to attend to. Carroll set the path for the current tone and stated that corporate social responsibility encompasses the conduct of business that makes it economically lucrative, it makes it ethical and law-abiding, and caring socially. And so corporate social responsibility is thus founded on a pyramid of economic, legal, ethical, and voluntary or philanthropic aspects. Rader and Hopkins both held all-inclusive conceptions of corporate social responsibility, and they denote the manner in which business conducts its internal operations and deals with employees, and whether it treats its stakeholders ethically or in any particular socially responsible manner. Pinney viewed corporate social responsibility as part of a set of management practices that safeguard a company and prevent it and curtail it from the negative impacts of its actions on society, while seeking to make best use of positive impacts. Corporate social responsibility is thus voluntary, and it's a contribution to a better society and a drive towards a pristine natural environment. Then, of course, there's always a contrasting view, and Marston and Baker asserted that corporate social responsibility is about the non-negotiable behavior of companies and their responsibilities to society relating to their operations when it comes to the environmental, social, and economic impacts which need to be positive. Other authors such as McWilliams and Siegel, and then Leyer, called on companies to go beyond mere adherence to the law and to morally seek to do social good as part of concern for both social and environmental issues. The success of any company was also measured by its involvement in societal issues, and tangible and measurable outcomes should be in place relating then to the economic worth of a company. The very famous Matten and Moon posit that corporate social responsibility reflects the social necessities and social consequences of business achievement. These comprise an expression and a communication of policies and practices of business that suitably reflect business accountability for enacting societal good. Carroll and Buchholz state that corporate social responsibility incorporates the economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic expectations placed upon organizations by the society and the community in which they operate. When, of course, we view corporate social responsibility through Freeman's lens of the normative stakeholder theory, it's evident that corporate social responsibility is indeed a subcategory of business ethics. Freeman states that stakeholder theory begins with the supposition that values are unavoidably and explicitly a part of all business conduct. Then the concept of CSR has been linked to sustainable development and has come to integrate three dimensions, including an economic one, in which profits are important, followed by a social dimension in which responsibility to society and all stakeholders is vital. And of course, the most important would be the environmental dimension, in which responsibility for the natural environment as such is essential. The importance of corporate social responsibility cannot be underestimated, as it has a huge influence on public perceptions of how a business functions. We then see that corporate social responsibility is increasingly viewed as a vital strategic tool for corporations and smaller enterprises. And within this context, stakeholders of business are progressively wanting to know more about what such entities are doing in the society. Are they morally driven to operate? Are they seeking more transparency and accountability from one another? And are they transparent and accountable as businesses themselves? On a daily basis, the media feature articles describing cases of fraud, corruption, and other criminal activities stemming from business practices across the globe. Countless company scandals smear the image of businesses, since stories such as that of the Italian dairy business Parmalat, whose directors defrauded investors of billions of US dollars, and many other such reports, it has become immutable for business to win stakeholder trust and respect. This has been shown to have transformed corporate governance and management in recent times. Kotler and Lee tell us that most companies now include CSR in their communications information related to ethical values and responsible behavior. And this is in the hope of improving their brand's reputation and in order, of course, to gain favored public reputation and recognition. There are, of course, those who see no need for corporate social responsibility at all in any sense of the word. Milton Friedman argued that all that matters is the bottom line and that corporate social responsibility is generally undertaken based on narcissistic and egotistical motives rather than out of a genuine care for society. The maximization of profits is all that matters. In many cases, corporate social responsibility is nothing more than a belief that a firm has an ulterior motive based on contextual information that it receives. Despite all the above sentiments, it's evident that stakeholders are more than ever expecting businesses to recognize their social responsibilities. They are expected then as companies to make positive contributions within the communities in which they operate and to thus inform society of both the scope and the effectiveness of their corporate social responsibility endeavors. And so business can no longer afford to ignore calls for real corporate social responsibility initiatives and are pressurized by society to engage in activities beyond the mere bottom line, and for example to be especially cognizant of the need to care for the very fragile global environment. Corporate social responsibility must in addition embrace the welfare of all the employees, and above all, promote ethical business conduct. A stakeholder theory perspective on the ethicality of corporate social responsibility initiatives suggests that managers should recognize and attend to the welfare of a broader set of constituent groups, including and especially the employee. The normative stakeholder theory in corporate social responsibility draws its philosophy from ethics, and it upholds the notion that businesses are morally accountable to look after the concerns of all their stakeholders, which include the owners, the employees, the customers, the agents, the vendors, and the community, rather than only the shareholders of the business. Adam Smith, once again, in his major work, The Theory of Moral Sentiment, asserted that one cannot purport to be human without having at least some sense of what it means to be moral. And so the notion of corporate social responsibility comes into mind. Numerous businesses are adopting plainly articulated corporate social responsibility policies and making these a very important integral part of their strategy, as well as the key focal points of business ethos and culture. Where businesses are perceptibly socially responsible, they are likely to obtain more customers, or at least more satisfied customers. They will also potentially tend to attract like-minded employees who are intent on driving global sustainability and become more independent of governmental handouts, and they invariably make their business stable and sustainable. Many businesses are hypocritical, however, when it comes to corporate social responsibility. They claim to do something worthwhile, but in reality they are not, and merely upholding some kind of facade. Generally, consumers do not believe the claims of business that they are engaging in true CSR activities, but rather they see a plethora of profit-based motivations in most business CSR endeavors. And many people believe that businesses are concentrating on effective CSR due to the pressure that is exerted on them by especially the public. In 2015, the notion of sustainable development gathered momentum, as was evidenced by the third annual Conference on Financing for Development of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. The United Nations Sustainable Development Summit in New York, and finally the 6th Annual Paris Conference all stressed the importance of corporate social responsibility. And with that, ladies and gents, I leave you to dwell on what I've spoken about today and to think about this carefully in terms of how you practice in your business and how you operate in a global environment. Thank you.